And we are here with Rob and Tony talking about inspiration. What do you have lying around the house that helps you prepare for a game? Or is it, as Time Lord Tanya was telling us about her documentaries shelf? Is it about a statuettes that you have or something lying around? What do you guys have, and how can other people look around their houses to find inspiration for putting together a kick-ass role-playing game?
Well, I think Rob should probably start this off because he runs a lot more than anyone else at our table. So I'm sure he has just more ammunition to begin with.
Oh man, I steal from everything.
I will say I do that too.
Yeah, maybe steal is a harsh word, but borrow or nod towards heavily or
Appropriate.
appropriate for your needs. Um, I definitely have used the entire plot of like the first Metal Gear Solid game for a segment in a Dark Heresy game I ran for 40K. So Metal Gear Solid in the 41st millennium kind of stuff, but changed so it wasn't boring for anyone who knew they didn't know. None of them had played it, but it wasn't boring. But I mean, books are great inspiration. That's a good idea for Dark Heresy. If you don't know what it is, it's basically a game where you play as an Inquisitor's like acolyte warband in the 40K world. There are some really great 40K Inquisitor novels by Dan Abnett called Eisenhorn and Ravener. And I remember when I was doing my game for my Tuesday group, Dark Heresy, I didn't do the same scenes, but I was heavily inspired and influenced by that, by how the characters and Inquisitors acted in those books. I was like, that's kind of what I think Inquisitors act like, or how I modeled what my in-game characters acted like, or how they treated their subordinates and whatnot. So, fiction in that world, if you're so lucky to have a be playing in a world with a lot of fiction, is great. We did a very long Game of Thrones campaign, me, Tony, and Josh, and I mean those books are just a wealth of information. I mean the internet is just flowing with ideas and characters that aren't used, or ideas to use characters in different ways. So I mean books are fantastic. I mean even if it's something like you read, Stephen King's Dark Tower, and you think like the different colored crystal seeing balls in that are really cool. Steal that and put something like it in your Dungeons and Dragons game. Maybe that's a magic item people can find. I mean, just taking something and putting a slightly different skin on top of it can really get the most out of it, and people will think you're super smart and awesome and come up with all these great ideas when really you're just taking someone else's idea and reappropriating it. But what do they say? What copying is the best flattery, or I can't get the term,
Imitation is the best form of
imitation,
Mm-hmm.
best form of flattery. Yeah, so yeah, I'd say books are a great start. I mean, movies. I mean, how many times I remember we watched like the Avengers movie and the early Iron Man movies when we were playing like Marvel and stuff, and it was right around the time we were reading a lot of comics. I was reading a lot of graphic novels, and not even just general scenes, but just those feelings of those big heroic moments, and like heroes coming together, and just to feel reading that stuff, getting excited by it can make you excited to write your own brand new stuff. It's funny in the Avengers movie. There's a lot of those great scenes where, like, Iron Man flies down and him and Captain America, he shoots like his beam off Cap's shield and they take out bad guys. And it's that big shot where you fly around and all the characters are working with each other. I mean, we did that in like the end of Game of Thrones a little bit, where we had a big battle against the bad guys, and you would like kind of switch in and out of different battles and what the different characters were fighting and helping one another. So even if it's an entirely different style of world, I mean, as long as it lights your fire, you can use anything anywhere as long as you skin it the right way.
I think kind of transitioning a little bit, or just kind of following up on it. Um, there are kind of two ideas I think of that things can kind of fall into in terms of borrowing, is moments and feelings. So back when I did our Star Wars D20 campaign, I definitely borrowed heavily from a lot of things. There was one session in particular that was pretty much Raiders of the Lost Ark, um, where
Yep.
they went to Tatooine and were digging through this lost civilization stuff to find something that the Imperials were after and all that business. And I borrowed a moment very heavily where the truck chase in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he's hanging underneath by the whip and everything. I flat out did that. I'm like, I'm gonna have a speeder chase where they're flying through and jumping between speeders, and guys are trying to jump onto their speeder and all sorts of stuff. So like that was a moment that I wanted to do, but skin in Star Wars. So it's speeders. Rob's character was a Jedi, so he was using the Force to flip speeders off the road and everything, as opposed to just punching the driver or whatever. Um, but like more so as an overall thing, the session I wanted to have that very adventure feel. That classic serial adventure kind of feel. So just having like those, you know, oh, thank God we're okay, bang, bang, boom, things comes out of nowhere, or just a little, overwhelming, but the good guys versus the bad guys, very, black and white, was a little bit more of that broader feeling I was trying to go for.
What did you have come out of nowhere?
Um, Either there was always enemies, or like when they get out of the temple, it's like, well, you got to escape, and now you got to go steal the speeder or the plane or whatever. But now the big huge dark trooper comes out of from the hangar or something to come fight you and stuff. It's been a while. I don't remember it 200% clearly, but
I
go ahead.
definitely recall. I just recalled Josh's character, Drokar, who was like a melee, a hand-to-hand character. We had that fight against that big guy at the plane, and
Yeah.
Josh like totally kicked his ass.
I remember you flipping one of the speeders with the Force. You're like, move object, bam, and like threw a speeder into another one. I definitely remember that. But yeah, like Rob said, movies are a great way. I'm a huge movie guy. I love movies. When we did our Dresden Files campaign, um, there's our big kind of mafia boss, Michael Wyszynski, the Polish mafia guy in Buffalo. They met him in the first session, and they sat down in his private kind of bar thing. And I just watched Batman Begins. Uh, and there's a part where Bruce Wayne goes and he meets was it Carmine Falcone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he sits down, and Carmine's like, "Look, I got all sorts of power that you that you can't buy, because that's a council member, and that's what I." And I pretty much almost word for word did the speech and everything, because I was like, "That's a great speech." Like that's a dude who's just like, "I'm so in control, and you can do nothing here." And afterwards, I was like, "I totally borrowed from the Batman Begins." And Rob's like, "I know, but it was cool." But things like that. There's just so much, like Rob said with the Avengers, we talk about in the future when we kind of finish our World of Darkness campaign, there's going to be so many characters in this final, world ending knockdown drag out fight. And I'm like, we got to have characters jump in between, having like different team ups with people from the different campaigns and everything. So like, that's definitely that feel and those moments that we want to create, that we are pulling directly, in a inspirational sense from Avengers.
Yeah, for World of Darkness, there's a lot of large beats or scenes where I've reappropriated things, or just slightly changed things. If anyone's seen Berserk, I'm probably gonna break a little of Tony's illusion of World of Darkness here. There's a scene at the end of in the anime. It's basically like the ending of the actual anime series, but one of the main characters basically betrays all of his friends horribly, and like gives in to these horrible demon creatures in exchange for unearthly power, and darkness takes over them, and he basically sacrifices all of these people's lives to gain a bunch of power.
Wait a
Which,
minute. That sounds quite a bit like the mage campaign that you did.
yeah, so I definitely did. It wasn't the same characters. It was definitely a different situation. But I remember how enthralling that was for me the first time I watched it, and every time I watch it since. And I remember that feeling of like, oh my, just unescapable horror. Like, you are going to die, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you watch your friends get like literally ripped apart in front of you, and that feel and that gore and that brutality of it, how much that made me feel. I was like, I need a moment like that in World of Darkness. So I definitely took a lot of the big trappings of it, but made it my own, I hope, and made it something unique for Tony and Josh. And I know they've not seen that series. If they ever do, they'll be like, oh, Rob's a lazy bastard now. But hopefully I was able to portray that same feeling that I felt, but in a completely different context with different characters. Um, a lot of differences when you get down to the minutia, but that overarching feel is what I was aiming for, and hopefully I got.
There's a lot to be said for things. I mean, you think about in your life or in movies that you've watched or whatever, those big intense feelings. So think of the scariest horror movie that you've ever felt, that dread, that imposing creeping darkness and horror and everything, and you feel that when you watch it or when you think about it or whatever, and you're like, I want to make that into something for these other people to experience. And
What is it for you?
uh, well, I will say the best probably there's two. There's a horror moment and there's a suspense moment in gaming for me. Horror moment is Rob ran out of the back of the Cthulhu book,
Yeah.
like the pre-written haunted house kind of session thing.
I think it's called The Haunting in sixth edition. I think it's called The Haunting in that.
And Josh was out of town, so it was just me and Lauren actually. And we're playing, and I'm savvy private eye, and she's this sexy reporter and everything, 1930s style, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. And we go into this house, and we go into this room, and one of the rooms has just all like this religious art, crosses and stuff on the walls. And we go into the next room, and then we come back, and all the crosses are upside down, and just like little things that were happening. And Rob had turned off some of the lights, so it was just darker in the room. And we're just like, what the hell? And he's like, time is progressing, it's starting to get darker outside. And we're like, okay, blah blah blah. And we go through some more, and he's like, it's pretty much dark outside. We're like, we have to get out of here. And we left. but later we came back, and we're like, okay, we're gonna investigate. And we go upstairs, and you hear like a door open or whatever, and all of a sudden Rob slams his hand as hard as he can on the table, and I almost hit the ceiling. I was just like, ah! Like it scared the hell out of me. And because I was just so in, I just the pacing that he had set up was just very, that tense. I was like, something's going to get us, something's going to get us. And finally when that big loud noise happened, I jumped. So that was just scary. The other one that I remember quite distinctly is in Game of Thrones. We were trying to hunt down this, necromancer guy, and was it? It was Josh just by himself. I was just kind of watching this from the side.
It was the crippled maester by himself.
Yeah. So naturally, I'm just like, I'm worried about Josh because we're several sessions in. I care about this character and stuff. He cannot take care of himself whatsoever. And he goes by himself into like the crappy part of the city, and he goes into this building, and I'm like, oh my god, Josh, please be careful. So it's like, because I care about that character, I'm already tense. And then he goes and he finds like a secret tunnel, and it's dark, and way far down at the end there's just this flickering light, and it was just so suspenseful. And I felt it, like I was in like it was one of the most cinematic, tense, suspenseful moments I've had outside of like a movie theater, or like even reading books or anything. I wasn't even part of the scene. I was just watching it. Maybe that heightened it for me. I don't know, but it was great. So like that, there are two moments where like those feelings were conveyed to me, just off of different things. How I don't know if Rob drew any particular inspiration from, or just the way he was pacing it or whatnot, but it definitely worked.
I remember, at least with the haunting, and I think a little bit for the house too. I was just like, what is like every great horror movie moment that I remember? Like, well, it's never like, here's the monster. Oh my god, it doesn't the CG look so scary? Because that's not that's not what's scary. What's scary is that there is something in the dark, and it moves, and you don't know what it is, or if it's even there, and like, is it behind you? Are these things really happening? And the suspense is absolutely what's the best part of a horror movie, and that's just what I did as best as I could. And obviously, it turned out pretty well. I've done it again to varying degrees of success. So I definitely think that personally, I feel a feeling or a scene from a movie from inspiration, and it's not for me. I want the players to feel what I felt when I watched that scene, read that chapter in the book, went to see that part of the movie, I heard that song. I want the players to feel the same feeling I do, which is why you appropriate that sort of thing. I think, or should be probably, is you want them to feel what you felt, but through your own lens of it, I guess. Whether you can recreate it, maybe even do it better or do it justice. So that's what I kind of think behind it, at least as far as conveying.
Last year at Queen City, I did an 8-hour Octon Cthulhu thing where they're in an underwater base and they find that they're opening a portal, and that to get so they can build a base in the Dreamlands and have easy access to ambush Britain. But there's a Leviathan super shark that keeps trying to get through, and they have all these energies and generators to keeping the super shark out, and they blow up the base from within to destroy the generators. And now they're running freaking out to the submarines, and once they're in the submarine, they basically go apeshit on one another about where they're going to go. Some of them are like, we're going to blow up that portal from below and destroy the Leviathan because they have of their different backstories. Some are like, or we are not going near there, I have such phobias, that they begin like firing machine guns at each other and harpoon guns at the driver of the sub. It was like a complete sanity loss for everybody, but I did not call for a single sanity roll as they just all lost it at once.
I'm going to slightly deviate from the pre-game stuff and go into the during game stuff. I like when I role play to act things out almost a lot. So I'll get up and move around and play things out almost like I'm on stage sometimes. Because that's fun for me. I like it. But one of the things I've done for my werewolf character is in game. When we were fighting someone, I flat out ripped another werewolf's arm off. So what my character did was, as a bit of a trophy, turned it into a fetish item and everything, is he basically like tanned the skin and wears it as a little bit of a gauntlet kind of thing on his arm. So I went to Joanne Fabrics and I got just some of that faux fur thing for like $5. And Lauren helped me. We put a little like lace through it, and now I wear it on my arm when we play. And during the game, for me, I'll sit there and like I touch it and hold it, and I'm like, yes, this is my werewolf arm, and it reminds me of like that battle and I'm the warrior and stuff. So it definitely influences me during game a little bit. And I know at least at one point I was sitting there just kind of like holding my arm up, whatever, and Rob goes, "Ooh, you're wearing that," so I'm thinking about it now, and like that inspired him to just throw something ad lib to the scene about how I had it or whatever it was at the time. But that's how things during the game too can kind of inspire you to go further or try things that you haven't weren't thinking of ahead of time.
You did that during Threat Detected too, with some items and that
yes, very
Tor
much so.
had.
Yeah, the lightsaber I remember quite readily.
But you also had some like items that you wore that were Tor.
I made during one of our downtimes. I wrote that big in between post where Tor went and trained with some kind of Yoda-ish figure on a planet, and he gave him like this force imbued necklace and everything. And again, Joanne Fabrics, the best place for hobbying just weirdness. Lauren and I went and picked up some beads and clay, and we made a little necklace and everything. I still have it. It's still downstairs on my desk and everything. That was Tor's symbol of completing that training. I think I wore it the first session after I made it, and I rolled ones all day long. So I was like, well, it's more of a symbol of my completion.
Yeah.
After that, went all right.
Inspiration comes from the weirdest places. I watch. I still do a little less now, but I used to watch a lot of like Let's Plays of old games and stuff. And one of the Let's Plays I watched was about the. Are you ready, Tony? It's about an old series of point-and-click adventure games
Okay.
by Yahtzee Croshaw, called the Chizot Mythos.
Oh, you asshole.
Yes. So I reworked heavily most of it. I honestly, it's nothing like what I did for World of Darkness, but it's sort of a Cthulhu mythos style thing, sort of his own like take on Cthulhu, kind of a little bit. And I was really enthralled by a lot of the terms that he used in it, and a lot of the overall arching aspects of it that really inspired me to take that and strip away everything I didn't like, and then kind of build up my own brand new thing over top of the bare bone skeletons. So like Tony World of Darkness, the king is my own kind of a thing. But in that game, Chizot is referred to as the king, and he has this one prince who does his bidding, which I was really enamored by, which I've turned into the king being, in my world, this basically the antithesis to God in some ways, like this creature of entropy. And he himself has several princes that sort of do his bidding or adhere to him. One of which is Chizot, which is sort of my shout out to that. So that's like an example where something I didn't take much more from it other than that, but like even that little bit inspired me to come up with my own mythos, kind of like a nod to it. And in a lot of ways, it makes me. I'm kind of hoping I'm doing it like how people did for Lovecraft, where they had these Cthulhu stories and this mythos, and then people wrote new things for it or new ideas for it and expanded on it. And I was like, well, this is my like take on expanding on those old point and click games that no one really knows about, maybe, or if you do, that's awesome. They're cool. Check them out. But I was like, oh, I was really inspired and enthralled, and I'm going to take that and make it my own and change it and throw out all the junk and keep my own fat meat, so to speak. But you never know where inspiration is going to come from. Even people that you just run into at the store, they have weird mannerisms or are PCs in their own right that you're like, this dude is a character in a role playing game, and I'm the NPC.
So I'm going to throw a couple more things out there. Music.
Yeah.
As we've talked about before on here, Rob uses a Martin Scorsese-esque type soundtrack for all these World of Darkness games.
Yep.
And he definitely has ideas that he picks up from songs that he listens to and everything. But he encourages us to send him songs that we like or think would fit the theme or our characters or whatever. So we do. And a lot of it, I'll just be watching a TV show. Like I did a watch through of House recently. And I was watching the show and songs would come on and I'd be like, ooh, I'm like, I really like this. And as I was listening to the song, I would think about a character moment or, just a feeling that the song gave me and everything. So I'd instantly send that to Rob. And then, that makes an appearance in the game. And, it's definitely different than maybe I had envisioned it when I first sent it to him, but it still connects me to that moment and just inspires Rob to go, oh my god, this is a great moment for this because I listened to this song. A friend of mine at work had been like, you need to listen to this band called First Aid Kit.
Oh my god, they're so great.
So I sent Rob like 2 songs that she had recommended to me. And the next day he's like, I bought the album. Oh my god, there's so many good songs. I have so many great moments that I thought of for this. So like that was music that had inspired moments in the game and stuff like that. The other thing I wanted to touch on is sometimes like sillier things. If anyone's ever watched the show Supernatural, there's the yellow-eyed demon. And in one of his iterations, he has a very particular voice. So it started where I love doing voices too. I think we've mentioned that before. And supposedly I'm pretty good at it. So I just started doing this voice for Rob and Josh just to make them laugh and be funny and stuff. And then we were playing
It was Mothra's voice. Was that after?
Yeah, I think it was after.
I think so.
But I was running Dresden Files, and I flat out borrowed one of the villains, Nicodemus, in that game. But I was like, how can I make him creepy and weird? Because he's this immensely powerful, horrible, evil guy, and I'm like, I'm gonna give him a weird voice. So instantly, I was like, well, maybe I'm not gonna do it quite as intense, but maybe he talks like this. It's smooth, and he clearly thinks he's really cool, and he's doing the right thing, and you should join me and stuff.
I quite literally had shivers go down my fucking spine just now. Thank you.
And so whenever he played a huge part in the game, and I would use that voice for him. It was that's not creepy Melvin. Melvin's similar but different, Lauren. But no, so whenever he was on screen, he'd be like, "Oh, Desmond, come on, you're my best friend, Desmond. What are you doing?" And just like this weird thing, and it's just like it lent itself a little bit to how I played his character, in this kind of like, braggy, I'm so cool and suave kind of way, when he's just blowing people away mercilessly and these horrible, evil schemes. And, that was just a little kind of funny thing that I took and turned into, his character in a lot of ways.
So it's funny, I reread through the Dresden Files series recently. And it gets to like the first book where Nicodemus is in it, and it's like he spoke in this British accent and stuff. And I was like, "You're wrong, Jimmy B. That's not how he talks. He talks like Tony talks." So like as he does his lines, I imagine Tony's voice in my head. When
well, Desmond. I think I can probably go to either Rob or Josh and be like, "Look what you're making me do, Desmond," and it'll just get them right in the moment anytime.
Yeah, inspirations were like I have a set of old choose your own adventure like D&D fantasy novels that are like totally garbage. You're like a 15-year-old and you pick your way through your choose your own adventure. But some of those books have some really brutal stuff in it for like what's supposed to be for like teenage kind of level kids. And there's definitely been a time or two where I'm like, wow, this is sinister as hell, and I've stolen it and made it worse or made it appropriate to a certain setting, and been like, oh, this is amazing. So don't shy away from looking in weird places for inspiration either.
I remember during Game of Thrones, you were playing a lot of the TT like Walking Dead games, stuff like that, where it's like flat out make a choice, and you're like, how perfect. So we would get to these situations, and I'd be like, okay, well, you can save this person or you can save this person. What's your choice? And like, I'm like, both. And he's like, that's not an option. It's one or the other. And he's like, I've been playing a lot of Walking Dead games. So just like that sort of mechanic, even I guess you could call it.
It's funny you say that. Like those games make you feel like your heart is falling out of your body, and like
it sure did in Game of Thrones.
And yeah, I mean, I was heavily playing them then, and I was like, I have to make this feeling for Thrones, and I did, and then come to find out, Telltale Games did their own Game of Thrones series, so I did it first. But Vampire was that way too. We were watching a lot of Being Human, the version, and a lot of the songs in it and the feelings of it and sort of that style of thing went into my Vampire game. Not even on purpose. I mean, some of it, yes, the songs, but I mean, just because that's what I was into at the time, that's sort of why it cropped up in the game. So you can do it unintentionally where it's like, Rob, what have you been doing? Playing a lot of Dark Souls. Why is everything so grimdark and why are we dying horribly? Well,
yeah, it can kind of go from anywhere. I mean, before we started Vampire, I wasn't very into the ideas. I think we've also mentioned before. And I said, well, Rob, if I'm gonna play like this supernatural werewolves, vampires kind of ghosty game, I'm like, my idea of that kind of world that I really think is interesting is Being Human. You gotta watch it. I'm rewatching it, and he did.
I did, but I also distinctly remember that before Vampire, we watched Interview with a Vampire.
Yes.
With Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt.
That is very, very true.
And Tony
I forgot about that.
Tony was like, "Wow, Brad Pitt's a pussy, but Tom Cruise is awesome." I'm gonna play Lestat in Vampire, and I was like, you go ahead and do that, Tony. That's gonna be awesome.
Because I was so just like meh on the whole vampire thing, and then we watched that, and I'm like, Tom Cruise just like killing people and being crazy and blood hungry and just like whatever. I'm like, fuck this, like trying to, oh, I'm gonna be better and stuff, vampire guy. I'm like, I'm just gonna eat people.
And then what ended up happening, Tony?
I went from Tom Cruise to Brad Pitt.
Totally unintentionally.
Did not intend that whatsoever. That's Rob's doing.
Sort of happened naturally, a little bit through my own doing. Yeah, good times.
Yeah, like the first time I was like, I kill a country fair full of people, and you're like, do you feel bad? I was like, I guess I do.
Like it came a long way from dumping co-eds' bodies into dumpsters. God.
Yeah.
Lorenzo was a monster early vampire.
It was.
Good times.
Inspiration.
Yes.
Oh boy.
So what do you see? Look around where you're at right now, and think about the next game that you're gonna run. Find something in that room that inspires you right now.
I have this picture that I got from I want to say Gen Con of this little girl coming into a room with all these books and a big pit that goes to nowhere, and maybe I'll use that for Changeling. Maybe there's some library that goes into the hedge and there's some horrible dark fae in it. That might be cool.
So I literally looked down at my cat.
Horror.
And we have actually co-opted my cat into a character in our werewolf game. And I was like, I don't do nearly enough cool shit with Malkin. And I'm like, I should like have Malkin get into crazy bullshit adventures with us more often and like make fun of him and kick him around the room some more.
You might have a chance for that Saturday.
Yeah, because Malkin's he's a jerk.
He's
much like a cat, but
So what is inspiration? What advice do you give for people to find their own inspiration in the things that they're already into? How can people become conscious that the things that they're looking at, the things that they're watching and listening to, should be something they should appropriate into their gaming? Do you have advice for that?
I definitely think feelings are a lot more important than moments, especially early on in your career and far into it, obviously, as I've said. Taking those like moments, scene for scene or close to it, is perfectly fine. I think the more you make it your own, the less noticeable it will be, or the more obscure it is, the easier it is to get away with it. But feelings, I think, is what you should focus on. If you watch a movie and the main character betrays his best friend, and you get that feeling of just anguish at it, you can entice that same feeling with a very similar situation, but give it your own voice, I guess. So don't ever, if you're in that mode of I'm gonna be writing for a game, don't look at stuff as, it's a scene in the Avengers where they all work together and stuff and blah blah blah. Think of it as more of that base level of like teamwork. You want characters to look cool with one another. How can you make the PCs team up in different situations that they wouldn't normally be in, and invoke that sort of feeling from that. You watch Starship Troopers and they're getting swarmed, or a zombie movie and they're getting swarmed by alien bugs and zombies and they're blowing them away, and you think that's cool. I mean, you can do that in a Dungeons and Dragons game. There's an orc horde coming and they're swarming over the walls and stuff. You get that same feeling without being like, hey guys, it's space bugs and Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, there's a lot of ways to come about to evoke those same feelings, but use your own voice while you're doing it.
I would say be open, first of all. You don't necessarily have to try and seek out the inspiration, so to speak, but just be open to it. If you see something and go, that's weird, what does that mean? What is that? And then kind of like morph it and work it around into your own kind of stuff. I think that's pretty important. Just when you have those big moments of excitement and interest and everything, put it in the memory banks and say, okay, well, maybe it's not right for right now, but I'm going to think about this later. When I'm trying to figure out something. We watched 2 movies this past weekend.
Oh my god!
The Raid and The Raid 2, hands
not
down.
Seen them?
Yes.
Go buy them right now and watch them. They are hands down some of the best action movies you will ever watch.
Yes,
The Raid 2.
I will go on record and say best action movies last 20 years easily, probably, no question.
So great.
But like we watched that, and like the fighting in it is brutal and hard, and I'm like, I'm gonna put some of that into like our werewolf, where it's like this hard hitting, like pow 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 of like these hits and brutalness. That's something that I thought was really cool and really well done, and I just I want to incorporate that. And it's not something that I was thinking of at the time, but I know that when we get to it, I'm going to be thinking of it and be open to it, and make that kind of work. And obviously, I'm not going to be an Indonesian man fighting a person in a kitchen. I'm going to be a werewolf trying to slaughter spirits, but that doesn't mean I can't boot kick someone in the face or slice them and dice them with my claws and stuff. And it's there. You just got to work with it like clay.
And inspiration is very much that light bulb over the head. I mean, there are times where I'm driving, listening to music, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is a much better idea than that bullshit I already wrote. Like, this new idea is so much better, and I'll think and run with it just from nowhere. Like, it just strikes me out of the blue. So sometimes your own mind is sometimes the best inspiration. I mean, heck, we watched the first Suicide Squad trailer, and we were like, hey, all kinds of World of Darkness characters coming together to do stuff, super cool. And like, that's why we're now playing a 6 campaign long World of Darkness thing, because Suicide Squad was announced and we were like, that's kind of cool. So you never know what will snowball from that first light bulb, I guess.
And as far as appropriating, for my East Texas University game, I had basically a kind of Twilight plotline. Student falls for vampire who is kidnapped from wherever he was by the mob, because he can get through heat sensing cameras and traps to steal stuff from the military base. And I had a final showdown at the co-ed's house. Then I look at other game master, Carl Kiesler, and he had a vampire story where it was done the finale was a car show, and they steal cars and have a big chase using classic hot rods. So I immediately just threw out the last page and just used his thing. So looking at what other game masters are doing and looking online at other stories in the genres or the games that you're running is a great way of finding ways to add extra juice to your own stories.
If you're gonna steal from the best. And then, even though you're stealing, it's okay, because you've taken from the best, and it's probably going to be awesome.
And they will remember it. Any final words about inspiration?
Don't feel bad about borrowing or reworking or whatever. You can see it all the time in your favorite movies and stuff where, there's callbacks to other movies or other directors or other styles that people like, in books, anything. We watched The Raid, and I realized that a lot of the things I've liked in the past 5 years or so have very much borrowed from that movie, in terms of style of action and everything. And it's because it's good and people like it, and it's really cool and really well done. So there's no shame in it. You don't have to feel like less of a GM or less of a player or anything. If you're like, well, I want to try this, I want to do this because I thought it was cool. That's fine. Do it. It's okay. You don't have to feel bad about it because someone else has already done it.
And you know what? There's a chance that you're going to do something that you think is really original and awesome, and you're going to find out that someone else has done the same thing that you know nothing about. One of our characters in World of Darkness is a traveling werewolf badass who goes from town to town, righting wrongs and stuff. Lauren starts reading this book series. She's like, oh, that character's basically in this book series that I've never heard, that Rob's never heard of. And it's like, well, you know what? Some ideas are so good that they're just going to get reused, whether you realize it or not. So what someone once said, that there are no original ideas anymore. I guess the best I can say is try your best to make it look like it's your original idea, even if there's not.
Yeah, there's only 3 stories in the world, so everything's a variation on it in some way. So, don't you're in good company.
Just roll dice and have fun.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much for joining us and for this advice.
Thank you.